all started at the age of 5 at a primary school in Manchester, did it?
What you've been reading? Well, yeah, it did. That's when I met Graham, when I was 5, at our first school together. And we did start singing together at that early age. Yeah, I suppose that's when it did start.
You both obviously play guitars from an early age.
Well, I tell you what happened. It was all down to Lonnie Donegan. Remember that guy?
Skiffle.
Yeah, he brought skiffle onto the scene, and I think every young kid at that particular time in the 50s wanted to have a guitar and wanted to form a skiffle group. And Graham and myself, that's exactly what we did. Our fathers bought us guitars and we started playing skiffle. That was the start.
But I did hear that you very much modelled yourself on Phil and Don.
Oh, that came later when rock and roll came into the scene. And we went from the Levins into the electric guitars, the Guiatones, and we became Ricky and Dane Young. Would you believe? That's as close as we could get actually to Don and Phil. Buddy Holly really was the biggest influence on, apart from the Everly Brothers as well, on Graham and myself.
And that's where the name came from, is it?
Yeah, it was Buddy Holly, and also it was around about Christmas. It was 1962, and we were looking for a name, and I suddenly came up with, let's call ourselves the Hollies. What happened, Martin, was that the Beatles made it before anybody else, and all the managers and etc. from London came up to Manchester and just signed everything in sight. And we were around at that particular time, and we went down to EMI and did a trial recording, and we passed it, and our first record came out, and it was a hit. It was all down to the Beatles really opening the door for everybody else. We mustn't forget, though, that we were all sort of copying the 50s style music to start off with. A lot of cover jobs were coming out from the groups. Even the Beatles, even they wrote their own stuff. A few of their hits were Isley Brothers, Twist and Shout, things like that, which they put their stamp onto. And, we sort of took over from the American rock and roll, I'm glad to say.
Now, 3-part harmony, very important. An awful lot of the influence there, I guess, came from the States as well. But Tony Hicks joined the band, and that was really the sort of crucible, if you like, for that 3-part harmony, wasn't it?
Well, it took a while for Tony to get into it. I mean, it was Graham and myself who did most of the singing, as you know. Mm-hmm. And Tony, to start off, really wasn't a singer, but we thought that that we needed that sort of bottom harmony in to give it the oomph, to give it the difference, rather than trying to sound like the Everly Brothers. We wanted to sound something, put our own stamp on it. And Tony came in, and our 3-part harmony was born. Also having Graham in the group at that particular stage, he had such a high nasally voice that the difference was stamped on also with Graham.
And the 70s sound of the Hollies was very different. It was developing all the time, wasn't it?
Well, we got a guy in the group called Terry Sylvester, who was a brilliant harmony singer. I think he was sweeter than Graham. And I think that's when we started venturing into more of the ballady type things, because we had hits with Ian Heavy Is My Brother in 69, and we followed that up in the 70s with The Air That I Breathe. And there was a lot of people thought that, that sort of transition from the pop into that sort of ballady thing wouldn't work. But, I'm glad they were mistaken. They were, the biggest hits we ever had was in the 70s.
And there's a story, I think, isn't there, behind He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother? Isn't there a very famous keyboard player who played on that?
Oh, Reg Dwight.
Yeah.
Who later became...
How is Reg? Is he all right these days?
He's doing well.
He's done all right for himself?
Yeah, I think he's going to last.
Absolutely.
I think he's going to be around for a while. Elton doesn't like to be called Reg anymore, so, I'll give him his due. Elton actually was around at that time as a session musician. He was a budding songwriter, and we could all see that, he was quite brilliant at playing the piano, so we did ask him to sit in on this particular thing because we thought the song merited, his kind of playing. But, his piano, it gave it that little bit of soul, and we had our fingers crossed about whether it was going to be a hit or not, and it took a while for it to get into the charts, but it finally made it.